Everybody knows that Chevy loves to talk, but he calls me up today and says, this week it's all about me. I hate talking about me, but he says he's got a couple of surprises. We're just going to have to see where this road trip takes us. Welcome to the ride.
Oh, it's good to be back recording, Sheldon. The ride always makes me smile because we never know where the ride's going to go. And today I was waking up and thinking about, our show, where we want it to go, the things we want to discuss. And we always say it's not the bar stool, it's the campfire, but sometimes it's a mix of both. And today is one of those days where I want to talk about you. We've been friends for a long time, played together for a long time. A lot of football in there that I don't know about in your life. One of the things that fascinates me is how does a kid from North Battleford, as far as where I was concerned, coming from Montreal, that was literally the middle of nowhere. Because growing up in Montreal, anything east of Toronto, I didn't really know much about. So North Battleford, middle of nowhere, probably not known for being a powerhouse community football factory, yet you, farm kid from Saskatchewan, winds up playing NCAA Division I football for a really historic program, Iowa State. It's always fascinated me, and we've never talked about it. So that's something I want to touch on today. But before I start with that, I want to surprise you. A couple of times in our conversations and some of the shows we've had in the past, you said you wanted to surprise me. So today I was out. I dropped my kids off at school. I went for a coffee, and I went to a thrift shop. I was actually looking for a proper table to set up for our show as we get closer and closer to season 1. I want to feel like I have more of a setup, which I don't right now. Right now, I'm actually broadcasting off the top of a foosball table.
I am going to jump in for a second though. It's a good look. Our new mics just came in, and I'm pretty excited to see it live on you and hear what it sounds like after the show. Because quite frankly, season 0, our audio has been bad.
Yeah, but it's really better bad. Today, like you said,
way better.
New mics. But back to the story. So I'm at the thrift shop. I'm looking for sort of a bar, a cocktail table, but I can't find it. So I'm just walking around browsing, and I come upon this, okay? I come upon this, and I pick it up for $5. Can you read what that says?
Oh, my God.
Nasty things.
Yeah, there you go.
Nasty things. So it's an adult humor in a box game, and it says, you won't believe the outrageous things you hear. So, except for tearing off the tape and undoing one package of cards, which is a brand new game. It's never been opened. I've never opened this. So what I'm going to do right now, Sheldon, I am going to open this box. I'm going to pull out 3 of the cards. And since you're nasty, you're going to have to answer 3 nasty things. That's literally what this is about. So they might not be so bad. I have no clue what's going on.
They might be worse.
They might be worse. But what I'll do is we want to keep this a show that you can listen to in the car with your kids, because we want guys are busy. They're running around. You don't always have the luxury of watching it in private. And we want to make sure that it's a PG show. That's why we try and keep the swears down. Once in a while they come out. Sheldon puts a weird sound edit in there, and it goes.
That was a chicken cluck, by the way.
That was terrible. Anyhow, so since you're nasty, it's your game. Nasty thoughts. Sheldon, please list me 3 things you are still not sure you understand.
3 things I'm sure that I'm not sure that I understand.
I'll probably give you the first one. Women.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's just a given. I've been married for 15 years. Still don't understand that.
Dinosaurs.
All right. Well, there's one obvious one. My boy, picking him up from school every day, he's like obsessed with the 4th dimension, and he tries to explain to me what it would look like for us in a 3-dimensional world, what something coming through the 4th dimension would look like, and that's my mind's just blown on that. So that's the first one. The other thing is music. Trying to keep up with my kids, and they're into all these like funky time signatures. I've talked about it before, like 7/16. Last night we were at a Wranglers game, and they're playing a Metallica song, and Adric says to me, "Dad, that's in 7/12 time," and I'm like, so I don't understand time signatures. And I think the last one is, women. I've been married for 15 years, and I still don't know how I push certain buttons to get her upset at me. I'm getting better at getting out of trouble. Usually it's just keeping my mouth shut. But yeah, women, the fourth dimension, and time signatures, just.
You know what? Those are three things I don't understand either.
But that wasn't exactly a real nasty question, though, was it?
Well, you know what? There could be surprises. Okay, well, I guess it depends how you answer. How about this one?
And I got a feeling over a few drinks that this game could completely change.
This implodes. How about, okay, last one here, and then we'll get on with the show. Actually, there could be two more. Things Harry Potter should have been using his magic for.
I think he could have probably got himself in a lot more trouble than he did using the magic that he had. Like, he had an invisible cloak and all that stuff, and the imagination just let it take you where, if I was a kid in junior high or high school and I had the ability to go invisible, just use your imagination.
Well, Sheldon, I'll let you use your imagination for that. And this is the last one. Things or thing that you have changed your mind about.
Oh boy. Oh wow.
Is there something that you've changed your mind about in the last few years, like either major or minor? Like,
well, I'm going to quote my brother on this. One time he said to me, "You know what? When I was younger, I used to tell people the way that I was. Now, as I'm older and a little more mature, I just call it how I see it." I think something I've probably changed my mind on. I think growing up as a Saskatchewan farm kid, you always looked at LGBTQ issues is from the mindset of a conservative Saskatchewan farm kid, and I used to think there was a right side and a wrong side. Now, just people can do their thing, be their own persons, and it doesn't bother me anymore. So I think I've grown up a little bit and matured on that one.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, well, it's out there right now, right? You can't get away from it, and probably for the better. Like I said, it's the Saskatchewan farm was a long time ago and a lot of years ago, and the world has changed a lot. Oh
yeah, I'm sure. Well, I mean, so much just even being a dad and now being exposed to through your own children, right? Like,
yeah, totally.
They're not growing up in the same world that we grew up in, and if we don't learn to understand their world, how can we give them good advice? And I'm not talking about good advice from where we came from, because Lord knows we all look at some of the things that happened in our own homes. We say, well, we never want to repeat that, whether it was bad or bad advice or just a place of ignorance. And now we have the ability to learn more, to understand more, and then teach properly. Or at least I always think with my kids, what I think isn't necessarily right or wrong. I just want to teach them to think for themselves, with an open mind, no matter what the issue is, right? Like, whether it's sports, whether it's politics, whether it's social issues, I want them to be able to analyze and come to a good conclusion. Not something that someone tells them to make, but something that they can actually thoughtfully process from a place of good. Anything that comes from a place of hatred, I got no place for. Anything that comes from a place of ignorance and hearsay, I've got no place for. But if you actually research, debate, have solid dialogue, ask questions that you don't understand, and not be afraid to ask questions, then I think, that's a good place to start understanding anything, whatever the issue is. So really cool that you brought that up. I mean, that's very timely these days, whether it's in society, whether it's in sport. We could probably do a whole show on that, but I don't want to. But that was Nasty Thoughts, brought to you by the Goodwill. Go there for all your board game needs, apparently. But Sheldon,
what's a game like that cost at the thrift shop anyway?
$5.
$5, eh?
And it's brand new. Like, I cracked it open. I expected cards to be missing and all that. Yeah. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to buy it anyways. And then I opened it up and it was brand new. I just, like I said, I unpackaged one of the packages of cards so that I would speed that up on the air so that, you weren't watching me fumble with my big toe fingers to open it up. But check it out. Nasty thoughts. I mean, or nasty things. Isn't that awesome? We're going to play that every episode. I'm going to put you on the spot. I think that's your segment.
Yeah,
that's your segment. So back to my original opening, and that was your football career. Not professional football career, but, when you started off, first of all, what age did you start playing football, Sheldon?
Well, that's I was probably 15 years old. It's funny, you brought up a couple of things. You said middle of nowhere. I was actually about 30 miles east of the middle of nowhere. I grew up in this little on a farm. Went to this K-12 school in Mayfair, Saskatchewan, which was awesome. Awesome.
How many kids? How many kids in a Mayfair, Saskatchewan school?
In a K-12 school, there's about 120 kids. The town of Mayfair had about 60 people. We got our mail from a town called Richard that had 16 people, and Spears that had 10 people was our phone exchange. So it was like really small town. But in terms of North Battleford, there actually was a bit of a football history there. I don't know if you remember, but in the mid-'80s, I think it's 1986, the Rookie of the Year in the NFL was Reuben Mays for the New Orleans Saints. And he was actually a kid from North Battleford. He grew up, played for the North Battleford Vikings, went to Washington State. And, in a lot of ways, he opened up the imagination that, a guy from a small town could play in the NFL. And he also opened up a lot of eyes between him and my coach, Don Hodgins, built a lot of connections down in the States, which helped out. But so
was Don Reuben's coach as well?
Yeah, he was Reuben's coach as well.
Oh, okay. So there was a carryover there.
Legendary. He'd coached the Vikings for 30 plus years.
Oh wow.
And a lot of championships, provincial championships. We'd go into Saskatoon and beat all like the big city teams, right?
So is the local field named after him now, or
it should be? But yeah. But so how it started actually, I was in a small town without like any football at all. But in our church that we went to in North Battleford, one of the guys there, Conrad Hunchik, was the trainer for the team. So he took care of any like medical issues and stuff on the field. And me, I was like, by the time I was in grade 7, I was 6 foot tall, right? I was a big kid. And he'd been working on my dad for a couple of years, saying, well, he's going to have to come to North Battleford and play for the Vikings. And then one day, they invited us to a playoff game. We went, just watched from the sidelines. I thought it was amazing, right? You see all those big high school kids, right? It was like, oh, wow, I want to do this. So the next year, actually, when I went into grade 10, my grandma had moved to Arizona, but she still had the house in town. So my sister and I went to the North Battleford Comprehensive High School, the Comp. And mom and dad would sometimes they would stay in town, sometimes they'd stay in the farm. So I was really on my own a lot with my older sister from grade 10. And that's where I started playing.
So your parents lived about what'd you say,
30 minutes? 30 minutes.
30 minutes away. Yeah. And you lived at your grandma's house.
Yeah, with my
in
older
North
sister.
Battleford, just with your older sister. And how much older was she?
Just a couple of years. She's in grade 12, and I was in grade 10 my first year.
Oh wow, that's an amazing level of independence. That's not typical of any kid.
But that's what you kind of have to do, right? Because in hockey, junior hockey, you got borders and stuff like that. Like you can stay with your billets, right? But here, if I wanted to play, is either drive in every morning for half an hour, or stay in town.
So what did that look like every day? The mom and dad just kind of set you up with meals for the week, or because again, that's the biggest fear when you leave your kids alone. And we talked about that on a former episode, is like, what are they going to eat? And it's like, yeah, they'll eat granola bars and popcorn all day. But how do you get those healthy meals in you? Like, tell me about that experience, because I've never known this about you. That's cool.
Well, yeah, no, I think they did send in, they come into town. I see them a few times a week, right? Like, and a lot of nights they would stay over as well. It's just during the farm, like during harvest, dad's got to be out there working and they're not coming back into town. Mom would bring lunches. I did a lot of like mac and cheese and hamburger helper. It was, it's kind of funny. I didn't even think of it as strange back then. It was just kind of what we did. But
and schoolwork, because that is a level of freedom unknown by many kids, especially in the time, no phones, no internet.
Yeah.
Like this is back in the late 80s, I guess. I'm assuming late 80s, early 90s. you're hanging out with your sister, you're coming home, watching the Facts of Life, eating cereal, and then, maybe watch, football practice, and then you got the rest of the night free. And if your parents aren't around, what are you doing? Are you guys partying, or are you just kind of sticking to task?
I was always a, pretty straight kid for that stuff, right? I didn't get, especially in grade 10, grade 11, I didn't really get into any trouble. I had some good, made some good friends there. And, I just remember just a lot of hanging out with my friends, going for coffee. We used to always go for coffee at Country Kitchen, especially once I had my driver's license, right? And you just, I don't know. Yeah, it was kind of, it's weird to think back, but yeah, I was pretty independent in high school.
That's amazing. So you play, 3 years of high school?
Yeah. So, and pretty immediately, I was a big kid who could run, right?
Yeah.
And my first year I was on the junior team playing offensive line, but they let me, try out for the senior team, right? Grade 11 and 12 as a defensive lineman. And I remember my highlight, I was so excited and so nervous when coach, calls everybody up at the end and has a list of who's made the team. And I actually made the senior team. And that was massive for me, right? Getting to play defensive line with bigger kids. But at that point I still hadn't played a game of football. I hardly knew how the thing worked. I just knew I'd run into people and take people down. But my first tournament, we had a tournament in Edmonton where you play a bunch of mini games, and that was kind of my first exposure to the game. I mean, it was a blur. I honestly hardly knew what was going on the field. But that was the start of it. And then, but by the end of grade 10, I was getting tons of sacks and stuff like that. It was really paying off. We had a great defensive line. Grade 11, we made it to the provincial, finals, but lost, I think it was 13-11 to Yorkton, which still, burns. One of the guys, Trevor Watts, a guy I played with, and that was the thing. We always argued over who got number 71, right? Because if growing up in Saskatchewan as a defensive lineman, Bobby Jurison was the world, right? We all wore the bandanas and all that stuff. Trevor got 71. He actually dropped a credit because he was in grade 12 that year. He dropped a credit so he could come back the following year and play football for one more season.
Oh, wow.
And sure enough, the next year we won the provincials.
That's amazing. So this, I want to go a few different ways here, but I want to stay in high school for a second and talk a little bit about that relationship between football, being a football player in high school, in Saskatchewan, and the relationship with the Riders. I see the Rider helmet up behind you. People listening outside of Saskatchewan, Calgary, Manitoba might not know just how connected that province is to that team. I mean, much like, more, I guess, celebrated and more marketed is the relationship between the Green Bay Packer fans and their team from all over Wisconsin. We have that same dynamic here in Saskatchewan, and many people don't understand it. Can you describe that a bit? Being a kid playing football, as you're starting to really fall in love with the sport, and then that relationship with the Riders, is that something that was nurtured by the team? Did your team get you out to Rider games to kind of really push that? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's a hard thing to explain because it's just the way you grow up. Yeah, everybody bleeds green in Saskatchewan. I mean, there's not a lot else going on in Saskatchewan, especially at that time. You had a couple of WHL teams, Saskatoon Blades, Regina Pats, but the big show was the Riders. And as a kid, I got to go to a couple of games and just felt that energy. But every year the Riders did a really good job of sending players out to the community. So I've met Bobby Jurist and I've met Goldsmith and some of the other.
How was that?
I'm starstruck. It was amazing. And especially after '89 when they won the Grey Cup. I mean, the province was just on fire. So yeah, you're well exposed to him. Our church brought in Tanal Alapate, number 91, and that's actually the reason I took number 91 when I went to college, was because I met this guy. I got spent evening at the hotel with him and his wife in our youth group, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. In fact, it was funny because I said to him, someday I'm gonna want to play for the Riders. He goes, well, kid, it's or I think I brought up getting a scholarship. He says, well, kid, it's it's pretty tough to do. Don't count on it. 2 years later, I met him at Washington State on my recruiting visit, and
no way,
reminded him about him. Yeah,
that's amazing. So you know what? That's and we could talk about that forever. And you know, you and I, we can talk forever. But let's move it on. So, at what point does the "I want to do this, I love doing this" become the "I can do this, I will do this"? You're in high school. There's a point where you got to start thinking about college. You got to start thinking about the next step. What point does that hit, and how does that look?
Well, you know, I first off, I've got to give all the credit to the coaching staff, right? Again, I was a big kid who could run. But Coach Hodgins and Coach Tam and Coach McCaution and all those guys, it's fun to think back to some of the guys that you worked with back then. They would get me in the gym early in the morning. We'd be training, lifting weights. But they took care of all of the kind of marketing and getting in touch with schools because they already had some networks with American schools. For me, I just kept playing. And in my mind, you know, maybe I was naive, but I just assumed it was going to happen. So in grade 11, you know, I was already getting, you know, U of S Huskies and McGill, UBC, getting letters from the different universities. And then by grade 12, due to some of their efforts, right, it was like Washington State and Michigan State and Iowa State and, you know, all these American schools.
So
I guess I just always kind of assumed that I was going to get there.
That's amazing. So again, when I think back to where I started in football, I started at the age of 18, like 17, 18. I played very little football. I didn't play high school football, played 4 games of midget. Then I played CJEP, and CJEP in Quebec is it's kind of like a college league, like almost like a junior college circuit in the States. And that league is very renowned for getting guys into the NCAA. It's kind of a pipeline, right? And when I started, I didn't really understand that. Guys were telling me I should play another year because, you know, I could go to the States. And I was very naive. I thought, you know, if I told guys, I said, if I'm going to make it, I'll make it no matter where I went. And I went the youth sports route. So I didn't even entertain looking in the States, except, you know, I had a shoebox filled with letters from schools, those form letters that you get from Michigan and Notre Dame. And, you know, I thought that was
You mean they weren't personalized letters? I thought they were.
Well, in the day I thought they were, but now I look back, I know everyone got those, right? But I never explored it. So I want to know what that, like, I'm sure it's evolved. I'm sure everything's evolved from the SATs to the recruitment process. But what did that look like for you in terms of being a kid, growing up on the farm, living on your own? I just find out, you know, no mom and dad hovering over you like most parents do these days for their kids' sports. You're literally on your own with your coach's backing. How did that look? How did you wind up in Iowa State?
You know, it's the first school I went to was University of North Dakota, right? Because it's the closest major university. It was Division II at the time.
A lot of Canadians there, right?
A lot of Canadians go that route. Yeah. But then we got in touch with Washington State because that's where Ruben Mays went, and so we had a natural through Coach Hodgins set me up with a recruiting visit there, and it was amazing. I mean, they had Ruben Mays was actually my host. When walking through the facilities, we saw Tana Alapate, right, the guy that inspired me to go the American route. It was a really neat experience. My hotel room they put you in is all full of Ruben Mays pictures and stuff like that. Like, it's a real sports town, Pullman, Washington. And it was just exciting. I'd never seen anything like that, let alone getting on a plane.
I was going to ask you that. Is that your first time leaving like your local area? I mean, I know you said you went to Edmonton.
Well, for football, yeah, that was for football. Sure. I went to UND. We flew down there. Then it was Washington State. But yeah, it's pretty impressive. So that's my first time, seeing like a 40,000 person stadium and nice locker rooms. And
that's amazing, because I mean, my first recruiting trip is I took a city bus to Concordia University and then took the subway to McGill, and that was it.
So, though this gets crazier. So I think I verbally committed at one point to Washington State, but then Iowa State came along and says, before you do anything, we want to come talk to you. And that was Coach Jim Walden. Funny enough, Jim Walden was Ruben Mays' coach at Washington State. Now he's running Iowa State. Him and the defensive coordinator, they ended up flying from Ames, Iowa, or Des Moines to North Battleford in a Lear jet. Like, they took a private jet, and there was like 3 of them. Landed at the North Battleford airport. My dad picked him up, came over for dinner, played with my dog. That was, kind of an amazing experience. Like, you almost felt honored, right? That they came in. But when they're going after players, especially like Iowa State's a major program, but you're always competing at that time, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, right? So they had to look outside of the main markets for players. And yeah, I was honored. They, it was, stuff like that makes small town newspapers, right? So that was pretty cool. And then I went down there for a visit, and what a program, right? It became a real discussion between Washington State, Iowa State. I still was considering U of S Huskies a little bit too, because Brian Towers was in charge, and he was an amazing legendary coach, right? But yeah, made the decision last moment, going to Iowa State. And
how do SATs play into all that? Because I know that's a big, we have a lot of parents listening to our show.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have kids playing any type of sport, whether it's hockey or football. And that dream of the U.S. scholarship is often talked about. I from when my kids were small, they were in hockey, and I hear so many parents say, I don't want my kid to play. I don't think my kid's going to play pro, but I want them to have a scholarship. And people don't realize that it's literally there's that stat. It's the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. It's like 1% of kids that play, whether it's community hockey, football, soccer, whatever it is, 1% of those kids play at a senior level in high school, and 1% of those kids actually get some sort of scholarship offer, and 1% of those kids get full scholarship offers. So what you did was really special, but at the same time, I want to explain to parents like what the prep was, and the SATs is a big part of that. So what was that process like?
It was the same as my football career. I just walked in the room and wrote the test and got a 1060.
So no studying,
it
nothing.
Was good enough. No, I think I had a prep guide, and I didn't. I just walked in and wrote the test. I know though a lot of kids do have to go harder for it, but the truth is, especially at that time, if they wanted you on the team, you're going to get on the team, right? Iowa State was a tough one because it was a really good academic school. Yeah, it was honestly, I had no problem with that. But I was always a pretty good student and good at multiple choice tests. So it was, I just walked in and wrote it.
So this is amazing, Sheldon. And, we could do a whole other show on your college career. And I think we will, because we're coming up against it. So and I love the talk, because I just learned so much today. What I learned is you caught fire at the right time, and football caught fire in you at the right time. You had a good support network, and it wasn't just your family pushing you to do this. In fact, except for the support of getting you closer to the school that allowed you to focus on your studies in football, they didn't seem like they were really hovering in your career. But you made it happen. So what would be your advice for some of the people out there that have kids, whether it's wrestling or football or soccer, whatever sport or thing that they do? How do you support a kid in pursuing that dream? Because again, yours was very different than mine at the time, but yours is what a lot of people want for their children that are in sport, and you lived it, and very differently than I think most people would picture it in my sense, from what I know.
Just because of where I'm from. But yeah, the number one thing is the tuning fork went off the first time I put on the equipment. I knew that was all I wanted to do. Call it naivety or whatever. I just assumed it was possible. Second, I had the genetics. I was a big kid who could run. Nothing more, nothing less. But everything outside of that, it was my family allowing me the opportunity. And then it was all these amazing coaches that just worked with me. I tried to be a coachable kid. It was 100% my desire that got there, but it was 150% the support in the village around that just made things happen. I sometimes wonder, I want to make sure I'd never underappreciated what people did for me to give me that opportunity. Because it changed my life. It was an amazing opportunity, and sports did that. I see other families though, like, sometimes kids come from a background where they don't have all that family support. Then you still have to rely on some really good coaches, and you just got to stay focused and keep that tuning fork ringing, and don't fall off track and get into trouble on the way. Right. But
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's so many places we can go. And I thought I was going to talk about your college career and everything today, but I'm going to save that for another time, because this was fantastic to get a glimpse into your life. Like I said, I didn't know anything about this, that you kind of lived on your own at an age, while kids are still relying on mom and dad to give them lifts everywhere and feed them, and make sure that they're doing their homework and brushing their teeth. And here you are, you go off to high school after living on the farm, and it's like, yeah, I'm playing football, living with my sister, and I'm going to make this dream happen. And I think that's amazing, because where you went after, we know how the story goes, and there's so many great elements. So this might be a trilogy, like high school, college, pros. But the last thing I wanted to ask you, and during COVID, I did this a little bit, because I started really taking stock of things in life. And, I'm pretty active on social media, and I started noticing that we're getting older. I'm, I guess, past my mid 40s now. So are you. And the people who influenced us, the people who gave us those opportunities, are a lot older than us. And we're at the age where we're experiencing things in life that aren't always pleasant, whether it's health issues or loss. And so during COVID, I made it a point to get back in touch with some of those coaches that gave me those opportunities, because I know for sure I would not be having I wouldn't have anything in terms of a football career if I didn't have these amazing people that helped guide me along the way. So have you had a chance, or do you often or ever take time to kind of go back and maybe call that high school coach or that college coach? Like, do you have a relationship with them? And truthfully, I didn't have a relationship with some of these coaches for 20 years that I played for at McGill. And I thought, now's the time. I gotta call one of these guys. And I went to Coach Bailey's house once when I went to Montreal, and I hadn't seen him in 10, 15 years. And I went and sat in his house and smelled the cigars, because he loves cigars, and he's over 80 years old, almost 90. I called my old defensive line coach Gary Kirchner during COVID, and found, just had a nice chat. What about you? Any reconnection with these guys?
I've reconnected with, and it's amazing that you brought that up, because honestly, like over the last year or so, I've been thinking a lot about that. I reconnected with my defensive line coach from Iowa State. But you know what? There's a lot of coaches that I haven't kept in touch with from North Battleford. And I'm almost feeling like, geez, I hope they know how appreciated they were. And you shouldn't assume that. In fact, you know what? I think instead of thinking about doing it, I think this week is the week I'm going to track them down. Again, when you're growing up, we didn't have Facebook, right? That wasn't until 2007 or whatever that I got on there, and I haven't done a good enough job with reconnecting, because I'm not on social media much. I haven't done a good enough job at connecting with these guys, but I think it's so important. And now as a dad and a guy that's coached myself, I think even if it's 20 years too late,
it's never too late unless you're not around.
Late. Yeah,
and Linkin Park. Famous first line of a song. It starts with one, right?
Yeah, there you go. That's it.
It starts with one. And that's what I did. I said, you know what? I'm just going to reach out to one coach, and totally out of the blue, right? And I called my old coach, Gary Kirschner, D-line coach, great guy. He was a teacher. He's just like the most fantastic guy. And I remember I was just calling him on the way to work one day, because that's when I call people from Montreal, is when I'm in the car, because it's the only time I really have time, when I'm sitting in traffic and stuff. And he was blown away that I called him, just blown away. And then we chatted for about 5-10 minutes, and then we scheduled a time, actually scheduled a time. Didn't say, hey, like you and I've done for 10 years, hey, let's go for coffee next week, and then it's 2 months later. No, we actually scheduled a time to speak, and we had a great hour-long talk. And for me, that's very, very fulfilling, because it does bring you back to that time when good things were happening in your life, but not just good things. Good people were pouring into you. And we talk about what our show is, right? Our show is a show for guys and the things that we're going through in life. We also got to remember that at some point in our lives, for many of us, we were lucky that we had some people that poured into us when they didn't have to. And I think reconnecting with them also recharges that energy that maybe we can do that for others. Because that's an important part of what life is. It's connection. And it's pushing that connection forward. So, I'm going to challenge you to do it. And the next time we speak, I'm going to ask you if you did even contact one coach, because I think you're going to come out of that feeling even better than the person who feels good about you having reached out. Trust me.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, Sheldon, I hope you weren't too taken by surprise by my little find at the thrift store. nasty things. I think I'm going to pull this out more often, get to some of the hardcore questions in there. But I really appreciated getting to learn your journey a little bit more, and really the advice you have to share for the people out there. I think it's invaluable. And yeah, we'll talk about your college career next time, but just you're growing up on the farm, that's fascinating. So thanks for sharing that. And yeah, any last words?
No, that's it. Boy, I tell you, you took me down a ride though, because I've just thought about a lot of names that I haven't thought about often enough. So thanks for the challenge. I am going to reach out to these coaches, and I'll let you know how it goes.
Well, thanks for all of you for joining us. Join us back on the ride. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, and all that other stuff. Season 1's coming soon, but and when it comes, you'll know. So thanks again, Sheldon. Thanks to all of you for listening. We'll see you next time on the ride.